When my father asked me to choose between the two Lewis brothers I had grown up with to get married to, I chose Joseph Lewis. He was the man I had secretly loved for 13 years. But on the day of our wedding, his stepsister, Jessica Lewis, leaped off the rooftop of the hotel. She left behind a letter written in blood, blessing Joseph and me with a lifetime of love and happiness. It was only then that I learned that the two of them had been secretly in love for years. At the wedding, Joseph lost control in front of everyone, declaring that he would no longer be concerned with any worldly affairs. I was left standing helplessly in place for the rest of his life. He lived in guilt, keeping vigil beside Jessica's grave. I resented his deceit, yet stubbornly clung to our marriage, and we tormented each other for years. This went on until we were kidnapped one day. To save me, he perished together with the kidnappers. Before he died, he looked at me and said, "Evelyn, it was wrong of me to keep it from you. But now that both Jessica and I are gone, that should settle the debt, shouldn't it? If there is a next time, don't choose me again." Then, I reopened my eyes to see that I have returned to the day when my father asked me to choose my fiancé. This time, I will firmly choose his elder brother Theodore Lewis Eve. I know you've always liked Joseph, but I still think you should consider Theodore. He might be a little boring compared to Joseph, but he is a lot more serious. Most importantly, I can see how good he is to you. My head throbbed with pain as I slowly lifted my gaze and saw my dad, Horace Pierce, sitting before me, patiently trying to persuade me. When I looked around, I realized that I had been reborn. I had been reborn to the time before everything had happened. In my past life after Joseph died, I was forced off a cliff into the sea by the kidnappers' accomplices. Even now, I could still feel that suffocating sensation of salt water flooding my lungs. I fearfully took a deep breath as if it were the only way I could convince myself I had truly come back to life. Dad saw how pale I was and asked worriedly, "Eve, what is wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" He then hollered at the butler, "Call Dr. Chase right now." At his worried expression, I hurried to reassure him. "Dad, I am fine, really. I just caught a little cold." Then I threw my arms around him as my eyes reddened. "Dad, I missed you so much. In my previous life, I completely fell apart because of Joseph. I was barely living my life. Dad's heart ached for me and he always tried to comfort me. In the end, he died in a car accident on his way to buy me flowers. It was only after he was gone that I realized how blind I had been. Now that I was reborn, all I wanted was to be a good daughter to him." Dad stroked my hair affectionately and asked, "What is wrong, Eve? I am right here with you." I shook my head, but tears welled up in my eyes. My mother had died giving birth to me, and Dad never remarried for the rest of his life. I was the rose he had raised with his own hands, meant to bloom brightly. Instead, I withered away for a man who had no sense of responsibility. Had Joseph ever been worth getting married to? I said with a smile, "Dad, I think you are right. Theodore is the best choice for me. Let's go with him for the engagement." Dad asked in surprise, "Really? But didn't you say before that you'd only marry Joseph?" I shook my head, and before I could explain, he asked sharply, "Did he do something to you?" Dad knew me far too well. He knew that I wouldn't have given up on Joseph if not for a specific reason. I forced myself to say casually, "Number, it is just that I suddenly don't like him anymore." "Dad, you are Horace Pierce, the richest man in Arcovia, and I am your daughter. The one who is worthy of marrying me should be someone responsible and capable, like Theodore, not Joseph." I didn't finish the last part and only clicked my tongue in disdain. Dad's face softened with relief. "I see that you've finally grown up and started seeing things clearly. I'll call Mr. Lewis today and get everything sorted as soon as possible." After saying that, he left the room. On said he was gone. I received a message from Joseph. He told me to get ready and that he was coming to pick me up. That was when I remembered that today was Jessica's birthday, and she had invited us to the Grand Royal Hotel to celebrate. In my past life, I hadn't known anything about their relationship, so I treated my future sister-in-law with all the sincerity I had. In fact, I spent millions on her gifts every year, but before she died, she left a note calling me a homewrecker, and I was torn apart by public outrage for months. Yet, it was they who had deceived me. In this life, I swore never to have anything to do with them again, and tonight was a perfect chance to cut off any ties with them. I stayed home all day and did nothing. By evening, Theodore suddenly gave me a call. When I answered, his usually calm voice carried an unfamiliar tension. "Did you really choose me?" I softly hummed in response. "Do you not want me to?" He fell silent for a moment before he said, "I do. I am just worried that you are toying with me." That put a smile on my lips. I wasn't worried that he would reject me at all because in my previous life he had loved me just as I had loved Joseph. "I am serious, Theodore. Don't worry. I wouldn't toy with you like that," I said sincerely. Theodore let out a sigh of relief, and he said gently, "All right, I am almost back. I have a gift for you." I knew he couldn't wait to see me, and I smiled. "Okay, I'll be waiting." Just then I heard a voice behind me. "Who are you waiting for?" I hung up and turned around to see Joseph standing there, looking at me suspiciously. I calmly replied, "I am waiting for my fiancé." To my surprise, his face twisted in disgust. "Evelyn Pierce, I will never marry you. If you have any shame left, tell your father to cancel the engagement." My heart sank, but it wasn't just because he misunderstood me. At that moment, I realized that he had been reborn as well. The first thing Joseph did after being reborn was to rush over to stop the engagement. Fortunately, I had already decided to give up on him, so I merely replied calmly, "I'll do as you wish." When I said that, instead of looking pleased, Joseph froze for a moment. He studied my expression with a confused and suspicious look on his face. It was as if he couldn't understand why I was so indifferent. Then, a sudden realization seemed to dawn on him as he sneered. "Since when did you learn to play hard to get? Don't waste your effort. That trick won't work on me." After a pause, he added resolutely, "Besides, after tonight, it won't be possible for us to be together anymore." So he came back from the dead planning to confess his love publicly. If that was truly the case, I could at least respect him as a man. "That is for the best," I said coolly. My indifference seemed to make his face darken. He said coldly, "Let's go. Everyone's waiting." I didn't want to go, but I knew what kind of man Joseph was. If I refused, he wouldn't relent until I gave in. His precious little sister had always taken pride in trampling all over me, the so-called top socialite of the capital. If I didn't appear, how was she supposed to flaunt her achievements? Besides, it was time I properly said goodbye to my foolish youth. The ride there was silent. When we arrived at the Grand Royal Hotel and pushed open the doors, I saw a crowd of familiar faces. Jessica, dressed as delicately as always, sat in the center of attention, surrounded by admirers. The moment she saw us, her eyes swept over me with disdain before she threw herself into Joseph's arms affectionately. She said excitedly, "Joe, thank you for personally decorating the venue for me. I love it." Jessica used to do the same thing in my past life. She would constantly throw herself at him, flaunting how good he was to her. She'd boast that Joseph massaged her stomach when she had cramps, held her when she was scared of thunder, and carried her when she got tired shopping. Every time I heard it, I felt both envious and uneasy. I'd even questioned their relationship, but when I confronted Joseph, he called me filthy. I snapped out of my thoughts when Jessica looked at me provocatively and said, "Evelyn, what is with that look? Don't tell me you are about to slander me and Joe again." At her words, the others began pointing fingers at me with looks of contempt on their faces. Some people are just filthy themselves, and that is why they see filth everywhere exactly. Is she jealous of Mr. Lewis' sister? Does she even have the right to be jealous? I replied evenly. You all know perfectly well if it is slander or not. Joseph's face darkened, while Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she leaned against him. "Joe, do you see this? She is slandering us again." again? I looked at him calmly, curious to see what he would do this time. I thought that after living another life he would have the courage to admit their love and make it public, but instead, he glared at me and snapped, enough. Evelyn, must you always be so vicious? Are you really spreading lies about me and Jess just because I said I wouldn't marry you? You'd rather destroy me since you can't have me. You are disgusting, disgusting. I mocked Joseph. You are nothing but a coward. Also, I only came here to make one thing clear. I have no intention of marrying you. Joseph froze for a moment before he burst out laughing. Stop pretending. My father has already booked a private room at Evermoon for tomorrow night. He said both families will discuss the engagement. If you've really given up on me, why haven't you called it off? I asked in amusement. Joseph, did you forget that you have an older brother? He blinked in confusion, then started laughing again. Joseph patted my cheek mockingly, his face full of scorn. Evelyn, how can my brother ever be interested in you? Besides, everyone knows you are my loyal dog. Why would he marry you? Do you think Theodore doesn't care about his dignity anymore? I hadn't expected Joseph to look down on me so much, but I had no desire to explain myself. I said impatiently, fine, just wait and see. After that, I turned to leave unexpectedly. Joseph immediately grabbed my wrist with a cold expression on his face. Did I say you could go? I felt that something was wrong and said icily, what are you trying to do? Joseph didn't answer, and instead shoved me into a private room. The others exchanged glances before quietly getting out, leaving only a man with a baseball cap behind. It was a stranger whom I didn't recognize, and judging by his demeanor, he didn't seem to be from our social circles. My instincts screamed at me that he was dangerous. I took a few steps back before glaring at Joseph and asking, what the hell are you trying to do? Joseph stepped back as well, pulling out his phone. Meanwhile, the man in the cap started taking off his clothes. At that moment, Jessica entered the private room. Upon witnessing the scene, she said smugly, Evelyn, how could you be so shameless? You clearly know my brother doesn't like you, yet you still use your father to force a marriage. Since you love forcing people so much, why don't you experience what it feels like to be forced tonight? I widened my eyes in shock as realization hit me. Bewildered, I snapped at Joseph. You are going to use another man to humiliate me. Even though I was very disappointed in him and had resolved to cut ties with him completely, I never imagined he would stoop this low. I had already told him I wouldn't be engaged to him, so why did he still need to destroy me? My voice shook. Even if you don't want to marry me and you are angry that I used to cling to you, I still grew up with you, Joseph. And on top of that, I am not even trying to get married to you. For a brief moment, there was a look of conflict in his eyes. He said, don't worry, he won't actually touch you. We just need you to cooperate for a few photos. The pictures won't be released publicly. I'll just use them to call off the engagement. After that, you'll still be a good friend of mine. How ridiculous. Did he really think I could still be his friend after this? How pathetic must I have been in my past life for him to think so little of me? Jessica snapped impatiently. Stop talking already. Adam, hurry up. The man Jessica called Adam pulled out a small spray bottle and aimed it at me. I tried to cover my nose and mouth, but I still inhaled some of it. Immediately, I felt heat coursing through my body. As he stepped toward me, I stumbled back in panic. What did you spray me with? Adam grinned. Relax. It is just something to make you feel good. Joseph looked startled as he said angrily, didn't we agree that this would just be an act? Why did you spray that on her? Adam looked at Jessica in a panic. She immediately clung to Joseph's arm tearfully. Are you feeling sorry for her? Jojo, think about it. Will those photos look convincing without a little help? When mom and dad see them, they'll know she was forced. If that happens, we're both finished. Joseph's expression wavered. I shook my head desperately. Joseph, if you don't want this to spiral out of control, take me to the hospital right now. Otherwise, my father will never let you get away with this. However, Joseph's expression hardened again. No, your father treasures you too much to let this go public and ruin your reputation. Besides, Jess is right. Don't worry, I'll be here watching. I won't let him actually go all the way. I trembled with rage at what he was implying. Was he saying that he'd stand by and let Adam do whatever he wanted to me, as long as Adam didn't go all the way? I gritted my teeth. You are a monster. Adam's eyes gleamed as he looked at me hungrily. With a gulp, he said excitedly, you should save your strength. You'll need it to serve me well. After he said that, he lunged at me. I bit down hard on my lip, ready to fight him to the death. Right at that moment, the door was forced open.